Tell me about your general faith in people. Is that one of your signature traits? Are you faithful?
We are faith-friendly, for sure. Yes.
Do you have faith in the human race?
We have faith in humanity. When you talk about individuals who have been on the street, we call it the soft bigotry of low expectations.
That's good.
When you think about that, people are not just a problem. You know, you're driving on the street, you see someone holding a sign. What's going through your mind there?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Typically what's going through my mind is, how on earth did that person end up in that circumstance?
So there's a story behind each one of those individuals. Layers of trauma, the intersection of homelessness versus childhood upbringing versus adverse childhood experiences versus domestic violence, you name it. The list goes on and on and on and on. But for the most people, they say that person is a problem. You have to look at it from a different perspective and a different lens, saying, how do we work on whole person change for that individual? Mm-hmm. First of all, do they take a choice and are they willing to do that? That's the first thing. For those in the other side village, they have to hit rock bottom, where they figure out, I can't live like this anymore. I've got to do something different.
I don't want to get you off track, but I want to ask you this question. I've heard this before. I've said it before. You can't save someone who isn't willing to save themselves. Is that true?
Yes, 100%.
Welcome to the Know Your Ship podcast, presented by eHub. I'm your host, Frank Dolce. Well, this is Preston Cochrane. Is it right to call you the CEO?
That's my title. That's the title they gave me.
The CEO of the Other Side Village. Is it the Other Side Village and the Other Side Academy, or you're the CEO of the Other Side Village?
So same nonprofit organization, two different populations. The Other Side Academy, mm-hmm. which is led by Dave DeRocher, executive director. Mm-hmm. The Other Side Village, so we split that up. The Other Side Academy focuses on those individuals who have long-term incarceration. There's substance abuse. There's episodes of homelessness in that too. But the Village focuses on individuals who've been chronically homeless that have a accompanying disability. Could be substance use, could be mental health.
Gotcha. And there's several other entities within the Other Side group?
One of our approaches to the way that we are funded is we want to be self-sustaining. All of our programs are free. There's no cost. We don't bill Medicaid. We don't bill insurance. We don't get a check from the government every year. We run social enterprise businesses. Some of those include, on the academy side, the Other Side Movers, the Other Side Builders, the Other Side Thrift Boutiques. So the Other Side Movers is the #1 rated moving company in Utah.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are familiar with that.
Absolutely.
Our students work in those environments. It's a training ground for them. Our average student in the academy has been incarcerated 26 times. Couldn't pass a background check to work at most fast food restaurants, right? So here they're learning. If you're in the construction, you're getting your general contractors, you're learning all these skills. Mm-hmm. And we've got employers lined up saying, we want more of your students, your graduates, once they graduate.
Yeah.
The Village, we have the Other Side Donuts, which is a social enterprise, award-winning gourmet donuts. We've got teams that wake up, they decorate donuts. We've got those that work in the donut shop. And then another venture is the Other Side Foods, which we're just getting launched.
Just starting on that one. Okay. Yeah. Well, I don't typically have notes.
Frank sent me this long list of questions.
I don't typically have notes. I send this to all of our podcast guests. And I say, this is an outline. These are things we may or may not talk about. This is the first time that anyone's come back and has actually taken notes.
I did my homework.
On the notes that I sent. And so I don't want to disrespect.
No, it was a good exercise.
What you've done here, because I just use this as my general outline, and then I just start asking questions. But now I'm going to follow this.
Free flow, because
we are.
For me, it was a great time to just self-reflect on questions that I really hadn't ever asked myself.
Well, I'm glad that occurred. And I think I really want to ask you this question. This will be the theme of our, when did you figure out that you wanted to be involved in helping to save humanity?
Yeah.
Okay, so just think about that. That's where we're going with this, okay? But first, let's just do some of these. I mean, this is great.
Okay.
If I say,
Some icebreakers. Okay.
yeah, if I say breakdancing, what
Oh,
do you
boy.
say?
If you say breakdancing,
This is one of the things he wrote down, breakdancing.
the question was, what is something that maybe nobody knows about you? And when I was young, I was like a legit breakdancer. I mean, to the point where I was
Like
at October,
ray gun?
Like I was at Oktoberfest, Snowbird, doing breakdancing on stage with my Nike
What are you talking
outfit.
about?
I can still spin on my back. I can still do the worm, and head spin I might, shy away from. But
I love that. I love that insight about you. Okay, we typically hit this later, but I like this one. What is the best advice you've ever received or given? Do you remember how you answered this?
received or given, there's a couple things I think I wrote down on that.
God didn't remove.
Yeah.
This is good.
So when Moses parted the Red Sea, right? God did not remove the Red Sea, but he parted the Red Sea. And I think a lot of times when we think about our own problems and the environment I work in is people are asking me, just remove these problems, get rid of this for me. But God parts the Red Sea. He doesn't take the problem away. He shows you a way through it.
Yeah.
And so I kind of like that analogy.
Yeah. Do you feel like you put yourself in that position? Like you're there, you're not there to remove a problem, you're there to help create a pathway?
Absolutely. We're here to show them how they can overcome whatever it is they're dealing with, right?
Yeah.
If you're dealing with drugs, if you're dealing with human trafficking, if you're dealing with trauma from a relationship, it could be domestic violence, whatever you're trying to get away from, it's not going to leave you, but your past does not define you either. So we always make sure people aren't just living in the past. You got to move forward.
How much of the homeless problem is just that? It's just cyclical. Like you don't know where to start to get out of it. You don't know the path to start walking down.
The visual I like is it's like a roundabout. When you're in your car, you're going a roundabout. Okay, which road do I take? There's so many intersections. There's so many roads leading into homelessness. And then there's episodic homelessness or situational homelessness. There's chronic homelessness. We focus on chronic homelessness. So for that, what we found is when we ask people, what do you think the number one reason or cause of homelessness is? It's mental health, it's poverty, it's housing, it's this, it's this.
Yeah.
It's actually the catastrophic loss of family is the number one.
What does that mean? The catastrophic loss of family. What does that mean?
You have no social network. You've burned all your bridges. You have no one that you have a trusted relationship with. And so you're almost just isolated on your own little island.
Gotcha. Okay, so, and is the loss of family, that could be related to lots of different things, like abusive drug use,
Yes.
illness, and
It could be I had an operation, or my friend had an operation. He had pain pills, and I was taking those pain pills, and I was stealing them from everywhere. And next thing you know, that opioid addiction led to heroin addiction, which led to fentanyl, which led to, and so that just escalates. And it's not just individuals who were brought up in poverty. We have individuals who were very successful, had very successful careers, and just some certain choices led them down the wrong path.
gotcha. Let's keep going down that track. And I'm going to follow along with this because there's really good stuff on here. But
I'm surprised you can read it.
let's
My scribble.
it's not easy.
No,
I mean, I'm working hard over
it's
here.
shorthand.
I mean, breakdancing, that one was easy. Skateboarding. Did you play the drums?
I still play the drums. Yeah.
What do you mean you still play the drums? Like, are you in a band? Do you have a
Not at the moment. I would love to be in a band, looking for some bandmates, but grew up playing in a band since 6th grade. Yeah, love to play the drums. Thought that one of the questions, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I thought, well, I was probably going to be a drummer in some sort of Metallica band or something like that.
Well, I'm going to ask you that at some point. If there was, that question is on here. If there's any other thing that you could do outside of what you're doing currently, what would that be? You can think it. You can think about
Well,
that.
I know exactly. What if I was not doing what I'm doing today? If I could, I would say a rancher. I'd love to be a rancher.
Oh,
Like own a ranch, work on a ranch.
yeah.
I think that'd be great. Or when I was young, I thought I wanted to be a professional baseball player and love baseball. So I think being a GM would be kind of a fun job.
Who were your heroes growing up? I mean, did you have some role models?
Yeah. Not to sound cliche, but yeah, I mean, my father was a role model. My grandpas were role models.
Yeah.
My great grandfather in southern Utah was a farmer. So spent some time, working on the farm
Yeah.
in the summers, which
Yeah.
was awesome.
Yeah. Hard work.
Yeah. And, other role models, I would say, like Babe Ruth, Hank Aaron, Abraham Lincoln, and Martin Luther King, role models for me.
That's another question that comes up is, who is your favorite historical figure and why?
You want me to answer that now?
Do you want to? It's up to you. This is your show.
Gosh.
I'm just the guy. I'm just here. I'm trying to
Facilitating?
yeah, I'm just a facilitator. That's it.
Historical figure and why? I mean, gosh, Magellan comes to mind. Probably more modern would be, I would say, like George Washington or Martin Luther King. Probably the two stick out.
Yeah. Well, I think it's really interesting, these people that you're talking about. These are aspirational leaders. Like, all of the people that you mentioned would fit somewhere in the top, 99th percentile of everything that we might aspire to be in our lives. I'm curious how that has translated into what you're doing currently. Is this something like as you were growing up and a kid running around, did you find yourself having these sorts of thoughts? Was there an experience that you had growing up that led you down this particular path? Because this isn't, I mean, prior to this, what were you doing? Prior to the village, what were you doing?
I ran programs for Valley Behavioral Health.
Yeah.
And then I was working for Shelter of the Homeless before that, and then working in legal services and financial services for a long time.
Yeah, you have all this whole career. I'm just curious, like what led you down that?
I think for me, I just had this natural curiosity for a lot of different things. And so everything I've done in my career, I feel like has led me to my role now in the village, because there's so many moving parts and pieces, and everything I've done up to this point, I can be able to say, oh gosh, this is why this was important. This is why I learned this, and this is how it applies to this role today. And as a kid, growing up, from about age 5 till 15, pretty influential years, my dad, who was a professional organist, worked for the state of Utah tax commission, but his hobby, his real love, was playing the organ. Played the organ his whole life. We had an organ in our basement, and he was in a band, and so the drum set was downstairs. I would hear all these songs all night long and have a hard time sometimes sleeping, but all these, songs would go in my head, and so when the drum set was there, I would just start playing, right? But he played the organ at the Utah Jazz, the Golden Eagles hockey, the Salt Lake Gulls, which is now the Bees. So I pretty much spent most of my childhood doing homework in the organ box at one of those events, or at the field.
What a great way to grow up.
It was awesome.
Yeah,
because it was however many days of the year I would be at a Jazz game, and these are the epic years of Stockton and Malone and Eaton and Darrell Griffith and Adrian Dantley and all those kind of early on Jazz icons. And so I have so many fond memories of just being in the stadium, being in the arena. Coming home smelling of beer because there was a hockey fight and fans threw beer on each other.
Nothing better than a hockey fight.
And mom says, why did my son smell like beer? We thought it was the greatest thing ever.
Hockey fight. Yes. Yeah, it is the greatest thing ever. Did you recognize at some point this attachment, this empathy toward the human condition that led you down this?
I think for me, my dad was a great example. There were some young boys that we would pick up on the way to the baseball game for almost every game, right? They lived near the stadium and they worked there. They were doing concessions, so he would pick them up and we would drive them home, and they became kind of like, brothers. Not I would say brothers, but they were close. They were a little bit older in age, but my dad was always kind of helping, just kind of that behind the scenes, and just where he could, and I noticed that. And that made an impression on me.
As you're experiencing all of this, are you having thoughts about, well, this is what I'd really like to
Heavens
be
no.
when I grow up?
No.
You're just loving life.
Just doing my thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Went to high school locally, college.
I did. Went to Highland High School, attended the University of Utah, graduated from there.
Were you one of the rugby stars at Highland?
I was not. I was a hockey, baseball.
Everybody I talk to in our era wants to attach themselves to Highland rugby if they ever attended, even if they just took some classes there at Highland. They want to say, well, I was
there's a
around
dynasty, right? I mean, there's a huge dynasty,
so
and a lot of my really close friends played, and it just happened to be same season as like baseball, and so and you're a Babe Ruth and Jackie Robinson guy. Yeah.
So
kind of just, and I could go on the list of of people that kind of just followed and try to get their baseball card, right?
What did you study in college?
I studied exercise physiology and sports science.
With the goal of?
I was thinking dental school, of all things. Yeah. And then I did a 3-month kind of semi-internship as part of one of my classes, and nothing on dentist, but I was kind of bored. Mm-hmm. I just didn't see myself doing that.
Yeah.
Long term.
Okay. So after college?
After college, I was working in a company where they were working on credit building and then worked at a law firm, helping with bankruptcy and just different things like that, which led me to help co-found an organization called AAA Fair Credit Foundation. And that was a credit counseling, housing counseling agency, which I then ended up running for about 17 years. And helping people get out of debt, improve their credit, avoid foreclosure, or buy a home. So that, and I still serve on a board of a credit counseling organization today, and still follow that, still involved in that. But I had an opportunity come up to work in the private sector, and for a company called American Research Bureau, doing international probate genealogy research. So for folks who die without a will, we find who those rightful heirs of those estates are.
Gotcha.
And it's a very kind of a cottage industry, so not a lot of organizations doing it, but connecting individuals who otherwise would not know that they were entitled to an inheritance. Pretty fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
Right? To just get a letter or a phone call and say, hey, Frank, your great uncle Jack died and you're entitled to a % of his estate. You would probably think, yeah, right.
Yeah. So what's the genesis of that organization? Obviously somebody like me who had an Uncle Jack but never knew that I had been named or had some...
Yeah, by law you were entitled.
To something from the estate. Somebody was like, well, this is a real problem.
Yeah, you've got to find, by law, you've got to find who the rightful heirs of those, of the estates are, and so they can essentially distribute the funds accordingly. And so it takes a while, but we would locate people all over the world, doing those genealogy family trees and records and things like that. So it was, from a legal side, working with a lot of the attorneys and those who were working in that, it gave me a good sense, but I was still missing kind of that day-to-day feel-good nonprofit, even though it was doing it, and so that led me to Shelter the Homeless, which at the time in 2017, which the state's going through this whole change of how we're running homeless shelters, and there was Operation Rio Grande, which was kind of like, let's figure this out. Let's, find out who the troublemakers are downtown, and let's, just completely overhaul the whole system. And my job at the time as Shelter the Homeless director was to build 3 new homeless resource centers. So we're going to close down the downtown largest homeless shelter. It's been around forever. And we're going to build 3 new shelters in different locations of the city. And then we're going to put the men here, the women here, and then the men and women at this one. That completely shook things up, right? Because then you have multiple operators, you have people who are trying to figure out how the system goes and where to go, and neighborhoods who may be upset from the NIMBYism of not in my backyard, you're not going to build this, and having to go to city councils and just educate the public on what we're doing. That was challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me go back to your desire to get back into a charitable organization. That was Fair Credit, correct?
Fair Credit was the first, yeah.
Yeah, that was charitable. Then you went to a private entity, and that's when you're doing the searching
probate research.
And felt kind of this yearning to get back into the
kind of this pull,
charitable organization side.
Yeah, I wasn't like, I want to go work on homelessness. The fact that the homeless had been around, they were looking for their first kind of CEO. It was more of an asset holding nonprofit. So they own the assets and then contract out with providers to operate those facilities. And so, and that was a very influential board of directors, governor and different philanthropic donors, and then raising money for that. So raising several $1 million for that project. So
you're a super thoughtful, super introspective guy, really talented. Like, you could go out in the private industry and probably make a lot of money and have a really incredible life. I'm not saying you don't have an incredible life.
I do. Mm-hmm.
But there has to be something fulfilling about what you're doing.
Not a day goes by where I don't, not either driving home or walking my front door, feel like I made a difference. And it's hard to put a price tag on that to say, oh gosh, I could be doing this, and yeah, I could be doing that. But for whatever reason, it's to me, it feels a lot more like a calling and just the things that have led up to it. And when I accepted the offer to become the CEO of the Other Side Village, I said, give me a couple of days to think about this, because this is something that's never been done. Like, we're building this village, and it's going to do this, and we're going to have this approach, and it's not just give people keys to a house and say, okay, good luck. There's so much more that goes behind it. We focus on what we call whole person change. Mm-hmm. And we take, instead of a housing first approach, we take a human first approach. Mm-hmm. So that's very different for a lot of people who've been working that and say, what do you mean a human first or a whole person change? Like, we focus on peeling the onion. What are the layers of trauma that someone's dealing with that's kept them on the street for so long? How do we get them to move on beyond that? Yeah. So that when they do get their own housing, whether it be in the village or somewhere else, they can maintain that. Yeah. But you know what I'm talking about? Like, they have their dignity back.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. I think that's an enormous, well, you can tell me. That's an enormous part of the problem. You've mentioned this a couple times, and so I want to dig into it a little bit. Things that led you down this path, or experiences that you had that put you into this position, or experience you had that benefits you now in your current position. Are those things that you can identify and that you can talk about?
Sure. So like financial literacy is a big thing, money management, budgeting, credit, all those things that pertain to everybody, especially those who are on the street. Our average neighbor, we call them, we don't call them a client or program participant, call them a neighbor. When they move on to the village, we call them a villager. So our neighbors, on average, make about $300 a month coming in. And that's usually just either a benefit or something that they're attached to. And so that fundamental financial literacy, how do we do a basic budget? Or we need to go open a bank account. You need to get your debit card. So those kind of basic things of life, that pertains to it. Or
that you did, like those are.
I've done that.
You've done that, yeah. I mean, check that off the list.
So
you've built an organization around that.
That piece. Then there's family reunification. Okay, you've lost all your family, but when's the last time you talked to them? Well, 2 years ago. In fact, we were having a meeting this morning, and one of our neighbors said, I finally got up the guts to call this person that I haven't talked to in years, and it was long overdue. But it's that reunification part, and sometimes it might just be, well, they say, I have no family. You do a little bit of genealogy here and there. You find, well, actually you do. You've got a sister here. You got a brother there. They might not be the same mom or dad, but you do have some siblings or some people that you can reach out to.
And that's your work in?
Yeah, Research Bureau.
Yeah.
And then from Shelter the Homeless, just knowing the homeless, the whole navigating the system and that, and we rely heavily on different community partners. Mm-hmm. Who those community partners are, those relationships, being able to bring those to the table, because we're one rung in the ladder. We can't serve everybody, and our approach isn't for everybody. And so if we can say, you know what, we're not the best fit, however, this service provider over here might be a better one. So that's really helpful. Mm-hmm. And then from the mental health, behavioral health background and working in that at Valley Behavioral Health, being able to know, how to navigate that system too. And so it all kind of just blends together
into what you're doing today.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the village and what it means. I have a few questions leading up to that. You mentioned building shelters. You built 3 new shelters, got rid of the original, built 3 new shelters. Mm-hmm. What is your experience with the shelters? How successful are shelters in benefiting the homeless population?
It depends on who you ask. When you ask those who are receiving the services, they would say it was either a blessing or a curse, depending on their situation and who their trusted, kind of tribe is, right? When you talk about the unsheltered population, there's a term service resistant or shelter resistant, people who just won't go there. They may not go there for a variety of reasons. One, they do a bag check. You go through, there's a security check. You can't bring drugs into the facility. You can't bring weapons, things like that. For some, that might be a detractor, and that's maybe a reason why they don't go there. Or they just want to be off the grid, right? They might be tax resistant. They don't want to pay taxes. They just want to do their own thing. They want to live in this kind of lifestyle where I don't want anyone bothering me. I just want to do my thing. And so
And that's what you would encounter in a shelter situation.
you could shelters, or if it gets cold, during the warmer months, people may be more on the street or in parks and things like that. And that it's so complex. There's so many. It's so complex.
Yeah.
When people say, well, we got to figure this out. Well, just give them housing. Just build more affordable housing. You can't build enough housing to solve it. Okay. And so when you look at the village and our approach is we focus on behavior and the root causes. What are the root causes that's causing this person, that person to be in the situation they're in? And we run what's called a democratic therapeutic community. So it's peer-led, it's self-governed in terms of those that are in the community. If we're part of the community, we're helping each other. And we have coaches. Our coaches all have lived experience. So they've all been homeless. They've all overcome major challenges in life. And now they're the ones that are helping walk beside the individuals and saying, you know what, this is how I did it. I think this could apply to you. This could help you. And rather than just focusing on providing just shelter, a roof over your head, housing is not going to solve homelessness, but it's the connection, it's the purpose, it's giving people a sense of belonging and dignity that is.
Gotcha. And the housing is just a part, it's a tool.
It's supplemental, it's part of it. Yes, they do need housing, but you can't just give someone a home or apartment and expect them to thrive. They're going to lose it. That's what happens.
Well, and this is at least part of the concept in the design behind the village, correct, is solving for some of those problems. Is there a challenge you talked about people being resistant. Is there a challenge in individuals who or is there a segment of the population that just doesn't want help, won't accept help? And that's the circumstance.
Yeah, I mean, whether you're law enforcement or you're a business owner, it affects everyone. Homeowners, it affects everyone. And in the capital city, and you've got homelessness in every major city across the U.S. And so we're all dealing with this. We're all looking for what's the silver bullet? How do we solve this? We've traveled all over. We've looked at different approaches. We've looked at different modalities. And what we've learned is that it's the community and connection. You have to have that piece first before you can, say, hey, look, just coming off the street, they got to trust you, right? So the trust factor is huge. But once people come in and they feel it's just it's non-judgmental, and they get this sense of, I can finally breathe. This morning in our morning meeting, we've got a guy who's been with us about a week, and we do a daily check-in. And so we all go around and check in. And he said, I finally slept for the first time in like 4 years, where I just wasn't having nightmares and I slept so well. And I'm like, okay, that's it. He's on the right track. And then you get some that come in and it's so overwhelming to them because there's so much social interaction and they're used to isolating, and the communication is very constant, and it might be just, I'm drinking from a fire hose. It's too much. And so you kind of have to really balance that. And our coaches do such an amazing job with them to know, when to push, when to pull.
Is it true that community connection is a top factor in mental health?
For sure. I mean, even the unsheltered population, that's their community, right? That's their family. That's their trusted.
There's still a connection.
There's still a connection. So we've pulled some off the street who have been in those encampments, and their peers are saying, no, you can't go. Why would you leave us? But they want to leave that lifestyle. They want to leave that maybe addiction or drug abuse lifestyle behind them. They're wanting something different.
This may be silly. You can tell me if it is, but it's very much like Shawshank Redemption. Did you see that movie?
Love that movie. When
the old guy is released,
and he goes to his own apartment and he sees everyone's initials on the wall.
Yeah, and
right?
Where he lost his community.
He's sitting there in his own apartment. It's going to be probably a group home and he sees all the other people's initials on the wall, like who have been here before, and ultimately his own demise. He just can't take it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's really amazing.
What's really cool too is the Other Side Academy, that therapeutic community. So it's much more authoritarian than it is from a village. It's less democratic, but they've taken that same philosophy in the prison here in Salt Lake because it's so effective, right? When you look at the outcomes of the academy, someone stays 2.5 years. They can stay longer if they want. There's no hard line on like, you've got to get out, your insurance is run up, or, you know, your mom and dad paid for it. Like there's
none of that pressure.
And so what happens is the outcomes when we look at what we call DCE, drug-free, crime-free, and employed. So if you stay 2.5 years, you finish the academy, the percentage of you being able to maintain a drug-free lifestyle, crime-free lifestyle, and employment are all over 85%. You line that up with any 30, 60, 90-day treatment program, come on, like
There's no comparison.
There's no comparison. And essentially almost every student in the academy has been through every program. And so there's no accountability. And in the academy, it's 200% accountability. I'm accountable for me, but I'm also accountable for you. And if I see something that you're doing and I don't speak up, I'm just as guilty as you are, right?
Yeah. Well, it's an amazing story. Okay, so let's talk more about the concept and the design of the village and what you're trying to accomplish there, and what are the tools that you're using to help.
Yeah, the design is, so it's 40-acre property. It'll consist of over 400 what we call cottage-style homes. People refer to them as tiny homes, but they're not tiny. They're beautiful homes. They're safe. They're well-built, using traditional building, structures and everything else. So it's at 1882 West Indiana Avenue, and not only are there homes, but we also do on-site services. So we've got a medical and health center, community center, a clubhouse pavilion, which is a gathering place where they can come. We'll have a central park. There will be what we call the cottages, which is another social enterprise, which are unique style, cottage-style homes, nightly rentals for the public. So like an Airbnb, but for the general public. That's in front. So the community, the village is gated community, but everything in front is more public-facing.
Okay, and tell me about the purpose behind that segment.
So that is to, again, social enterprises that create jobs for villagers who are living there. So for our cottages, we've got 21 nightly rentals. You've got customer service, you've got reservations, you've got housekeeping, you've got security. So all these are creating jobs for people, but also generating revenue for the program so that we don't have to rely on taxpayer dollars.
Yeah.
We just did an assessment. There's an interesting. We just did an assessment on one of our guys. Okay, he's 52.
And when you say one of your guys, this is someone who's
one of our neighbors that's in our prep school right now.
Okay, is the prep school different than the
prep school's part of the village? Prep school is preparatory before you can move into the village.
Okay, it's not the
totally
academy.
Separate than the academy.
Okay,
completely separate.
Okay,
same entity but completely separate program.
Okay, and tell me quickly.
Different wing of the hospital. Okay,
got you. Right? Yes. Okay, so tell me about the prep school. What is the concept behind the prep school?
The prep school, the prep school is designed to help people stabilize and learn the culture and accountability and be able to prepare themselves so that when they move into the village, they're able to maintain that culture and lifestyle.
Gotcha.
Sober lifestyle.
Are these accountability measures that you're talking about? Okay.
So when we talk about the village and the way it's set up, I was going to tell you.
Yes.
This individual. So
yes.
I won't use any names, right? But he's been with us a couple months. But what we did is he's been almost 19 years, 19 years here in Salt Lake. From the start of his journey on the street to where he was a few weeks ago, a couple months ago, guesstimate the total cost of him, so getting services, our ER visits, shelter stays, food, all of that, just that encompassing, day of life. Any guesstimate, Frank?
19 years on the street?
19 years.
What the social services cost
would be
for him? 19 years? I don't know.
Maybe just do annually. What about annually? Start there.
Annually? I don't know. $50,000?
71. So 71,000.
I thought I was guessing high.
71,000 is what it's costing taxpayer dollars for that individual
per year.
That's more than a Harvard tuition, right? So 71,000 times by 19, it's roughly $1.4 million that we have spent on this individual living that lifestyle. Now, fast forward a few months, he's thriving. He's doing great. He's on his path to move into the village, work. He can work in one of our enterprises if he wants, and we've got a job. We may not. We may say we don't have a job, but we've got these list of employers who are willing to hire you, right? So now he's giving back. Now he's paying taxes. Now he's earning an income. Now he's paying rent. He's no longer a detriment to society in terms of from a funding aspect, but also from a human aspect.
Well, I mean, just your own self-worth, your value. I mean, that's the enormous change that you can make. Now, is he paying rent in the village? When he moves into the village, will he pay rent in the village?
Yes, in the village they do pay rent.
Gotcha.
Rents range from $400 to $550.
And are these single people live alone, or do they live in groups?
No families, so it's adults only. They could live single or double occupancy.
What are the criteria to qualify to be part of the village?
Yeah, the criteria is a Utah resident, so we're not attracting everyone from every other state to come here for it. So that 18 years or older, 30% of area median income, so you meet the income requirement. You may have a dual or a disability. It could be a substance use addiction. It could be mental health diagnosis. And you have to have a yearning or a ability to participate in the therapeutic community. So reflective capacity, the ability to understand and comprehend feedback, giving feedback, remembering that. We have people that come in that are in a psychosis state when they first start, and it takes a few weeks for them to just start to stabilize and remember who they are. But once that happens, real quickly, you start to see these small steps of improvement and progress. So it's, for me, I get to sit and watch this happen. And when you see the before and after pictures of people, it takes your breath away because you're like, there's no way that's the same person. And it's just like you see their whites of their eyes come back, you see their countenance change, you see the lights are on. It's just fascinating to be a part of.
What is the success rate?
Yeah, so we've started, we're still early, we're still a young, the village. The academy, we've got outcomes, we're able to do metrics and all that.
And you were saying on the academy side, over
85% drug-free, crime-free, and employed, and maintain
after
that
2.5 years.
after 2.5 years. So that's pretty incredible. If they stay longer, those numbers go up.
Yeah.
Of course you're going to have people relapse. Of course you're going to have people that maybe go back to their old ways. But but from an outcome perspective,
there's nothing that compares.
So for the village, when we've started tracking it, the village started out as more of a day program, and it transformed in more of a residential. So we've got people there, they live there 24/7. We have coaches that live on site too. So imagine living here at your workplace, which you probably do, probably hear a lot.
I sleep here regularly. Dedicated.
Yeah, dedicated staff. So our staff,
and all of your staff have.
not all,
Okay.
not all have the lived experience.
Okay.
But I consider them professional, what I call professional BS detectors. When they're talking to people on the street and they're telling them about what our offer is, and it's like they can speak directly, like you're a football guy. If you start talking sports to someone who may not,
It's very easy to tell.
yeah, you can tell. Same thing.
Okay, so let's go back to this kind of success rate for people in the village.
Yeah, it's incredible. Right now, we've got those who have started the prep school and either graduate, so we do freshman, sophomore, junior, they move up and they do progress reports to the community. So the community decides on when you move up. It's not staff saying, it's not timely. So, you've been here 3 months, you move up. Are you showing progress in these areas, right? Heart, mind, body, soul. And we look at that physical, emotional, social. Are you starting to show improvement in those areas? And the community votes on that, and then you move up accordingly. Those who have graduated from and stayed in the prep school, 80%. So we do have some drop off. Could be health related, meaning their level of care is greater than what the level of care we're able to provide. They might need more of a kind of 24/7, a nurse on site, that sort of thing. We're not set up for that. Or some to just want to return to that lifestyle. Because again, we're trying to facilitate a whole person change. Yeah. If you're not ready for that, it can be a little bit overwhelming.
I have two questions. Do people self-select out of the program?
For the most part, yes, unless the community votes you out.
Okay, that was my next question. Yeah. Can you get voted off the island?
We have had a few voted off the island because of their behavior. It might be a reckless behavior, or it might be you're threatening people, or you're just not following the process, and you're just not just not cut out. You're not passing muster. And so the community can call you out on that.
Is the village a lifelong solution for an individual, or are you trying to, is it like a way station? You're trying to get the person, provide the person the ability to live in their own village eventually?
Yeah, we're preparing them for independent living.
Yeah.
To use a term, permanent supportive housing. I prefer lifelong supportive community because I think it's more of a community. Housing's part of it, but you're part of a community, so there's continuous commitment on the neighbor's part to participate in the community. So the name of our organization, The Other Side. People always say, well, what's the other side? The Academy's logo is a bridge. The village logo is a lighthouse. The lighthouse is because we're a safe harbor for people. The bridge is because you're leaving your old past behind and you're crossing the bridge to the other side. So that bridge crossing is actually a ceremony that we do both in the Academy and in the village. So when you're driving by 100 South and 6th East in Salt Lake and you see the Other Side Academy, you'll notice a bridge in front. Those Academy students and villagers they make certain commitments to the community, and it's very ceremonial. So they're crossing it's called a bridge crossing ceremony.
Yeah. Is that just for the community, or is that?
No, we have people. We have some family members. Sometimes you'll have, donors who make donations and things like that come and witness that.
Yeah. We're nowhere near the end of this interview.
Good.
So don't think of this as the last question. But
we're not the other side yet.
Nah, not even close. And I think you owe me lunch eventually. Not today.
Of course.
Yeah. How can people get involved?
Lots of ways to be
get
involved. Lots of ways. On our website, we've got, you can go to theothersidevillage.com. There's opportunities to volunteer. We have groups that come. They're putting furniture together for homes in the village.
Is this like an IKEA thing? Because that stuff is impossible.
Not all. We try to make it a little bit more seamless and simple.
Okay.
But it could be staging a home, cleaning a home, getting it ready, move-in ready for someone that's coming in. We have outreach events. So we've worked with different companies to do outreach events at parks. We've done barbecues. We've got a pancake social coming up.
Are you cooking?
Maybe, if I have to. But, for us, it depends on where we're at. We would rather have volunteers help come cook. Let us do the outreach. Let us go talk to people. So Pioneer Park, Liberty Park. And what's really cool is our graduates are part of that. So it's full circle. Oh. So they can be like, you know what? I used to sleep on that bench, and now I'm going to be the one that's going to try to encourage this person that's there. You know what? There's a better alternative.
Okay, so this is a concept that I keep hearing about is you're out recruiting. Like you're out actively finding people to participate.
Yeah, we're search and rescue.
Okay, so what percent of the community is the result of your search and rescue activity versus referrals, or someone just finds their way there? Walks in and says,
let me maybe split Academy and Village. So Academy, let's start Village. Village, our recruiting efforts yield about 80% of the people that are participants and neighbors in our community. The other 20% would be referrals from other service providers. Could be a homeless shelter, a resource center, a therapist office, different things like that. And so we interview individuals where they're at. They don't just walk into the village or the prep school, and we interview them where they're at. So they go through a process where after an interview, we invite them for a 2-day immersion. A 2-day immersion is, let's see how you feel about it, but let's also see how the community feels about you. Are you going to be able to integrate into this community? And is it going to be productive both sides? So if they do want to join, they write what's called an introduction letter. They read that to the community, talk about why they want to join. The community gets to ask them questions, and how serious are you? Any things that might come up, red flags, and then they all vote. That's the democratic piece. From the Academy, you could walk in off the street, sit on the bench. The bench is there right in the lobby, and you can sit there and wait for an interview, and then staff will interview you and decide if you're going to start that day right then or not. Or you can write a letter from jail, or write a letter and ask to be accepted, and then they'll invite you in for an interview. It's a little bit different.
Yeah. What does an interview out on the street look like? Like your community is out search and rescue.
Search and rescue.
What does an interview look like?
We go a little bit deeper on the second interview. We're looking at any sort of medications they're on. Looking at their mental health diagnosis if they've had one. The village does have a licensed clinical social worker on staff, which the academy doesn't. That's different, right? So it questions, things like, when's the last time you used? Why are you here? What's caused you here? What brought you here? Just
This is
trying to
second interview.
first.
This is first.
Just
interview.
trying to figure out, who they are as an individual, what's caused them to be homeless. Do they want to change? Are you willing to get off of this drug or that drug? Some of the things that we don't accept, so like methadone. If someone's on methadone, we won't. We'd encourage them to try to titrate down to Suboxone. And obviously we work with professionals, and we've got different psychologists and doctors that we work with who understand the population very well. And, but it's ultimately just trying to build that trust with that individual. And, finding out, you're married, you have kids, just those underlying kind of demographic questions.
Speaking of demographics, what % of the community has drug usage?
About 65% have a history of drug use.
That's it. I thought it would be higher. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them have been prescribed medications, and sometimes they're overprescribed medications.
Gotcha.
Right? For example, we have one woman who had 18 different medications coming in, and now she's down to 3.
Yeah.
And you ask her, she doesn't remember what life like on 18 versus 3. But that takes time too. You want to do it in a way that it's not too much too soon. Sometimes they see their peers and go, oh gosh, he got off of all this medication. I'm just going to cold turkey and I'm going to do the same thing. And then it's really rough if they're not just kind of sequentially just taking it down a notch.
Yeah.
But at the same time, for those who are on the street, we're looking for the desire to change. Do you have that desire to change? On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you want to change? Well, I'm like a 5. Well, why are you at a 10? If you really want to get off the street and change your life, it should be a 10. The one thing that we do to maintain, we have a waiting list, we only have a certain number of open slots, but we have what's called Village Connect. So Village Connect is our light version of the prep school that we do in the Salt Downtown Library. So every week we meet with a group there who has demonstrated or expressed an interest in being a part of the Other Side Village, and our coaches and our team meets those individuals there just as a check-in to see, okay, John, are you staying sober? And then we'll do that kind of light version of the prep school there.
Gotcha.
And that keeps them at least engaged, so that when something does open up,
Then
it's not like a waiting list, like you're prioritized based on where you at on a number. It's, who's showing the best effort that's ready.
Yeah. What are the percentages male, female?
70-30, 70% male, 30% female.
What about the age?
18 up, our youngest is 22 and our oldest is about 70.
What does the homeless population look like? What's the broad age scale of homelessness? I guess?
Sadly, the fastest growing population is over 65, sadly. And that's just not unique to Utah, but you have individuals who are in fixed incomes, rents go up, they can't afford the rent, they get evicted. There's no other rent even close to what they were paying. The other challenge right now, a lot of the service providers that do rely on federal funding, a lot of that federal funding is being cut, and so you're going to see numbers continue to grow and go up. The youth population, those aging out of foster care, is growing because there's just not enough deeply affordable housing options for people. Our average academy student is roughly in the 30s, low 30s. I don't know for exact, but I know it's around that range. In the village, we're more in the 40 to 50 range as far as an average age.
You mentioned the foster programs. Is that something that could be reimagined or overhauled? Providing. You're talking about what you're doing with the village and with the academy, and providing life skills. It's training. It's how to live independently, how to be part of a community. Is that not occurring in the current foster organization? I know we're getting off on a different topic, but it just since you mentioned that.
We see kind of the carryover from that. We see individuals who
that makes sense.
I aged out and 18, and so I'm on
what
my own.
What am I supposed to do?
Now I'm homeless. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
We see that. I know Governor Cox's wife is really focused on that. Is how do we, and encouraging families who have the means and ability to, help out in those, and just adopt too. So there's a huge need for that.
Yeah.
But when you look at those who are females that are part of our community, again, it's young and old. It's loss of family, or they're trying to escape a bad relationship, or it could be, sadly, human trafficking, things like that.
Oh. How long has this been in existence?
The village has been around about 3 years, but again, it started more as a day program, and that's how I got involved when I was working at Valley Behavioral Health, kind of thinking about the village itself and the approach and the structure. And so we were approached of identifying individuals who would be a good fit, because like any housing that provides a lot of housing, which Valley does, we had long waiting lists. So if you can move people into different environments, especially those who want a different opportunity, sober lifestyle, sober community, then there's that. So trying to find people. So I would say we moved to a residential program a year, it's been about 16 months since we've done that.
I don't even know if this question applies, but I'll ask it anyway. And since you already said there's not a day that goes by you don't walk in the door where you haven't felt like you've accomplished or helped.
A lot of tears. Believe me,
somebody.
this is a lot of tears along the way too.
It's
hard.
What are the challenges? What are the things that you could do better as an organization?
Better. We're always striving for excellence. We always say if you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough, right? If you're not experiencing failure, then you're not pushing yourself enough. And so for us, what we can do better is really telling our story. We focus so much on being able to tell the story and tell it right so that people understand. There's still some confusion. Okay, you have the other side academy, the other side village. How are they the same? How are they different? But we get a lot of requests too from cities who love the concept. They love the village concept, and they don't necessarily want to build another homeless shelter, but they want. They're asking those same questions that we did. Okay, what's not working? And thinking about what's the solution, right? And so for the solution, we feel like we've got this secret sauce. Like we feel like we're onto something where we know that it's working. How do you replicate this?
As a third party. It feels like when I think of a shelter or when I drive by and see some homeless population in the park, it's like, how do you get out of that? Like, there just seems like there's endless obstacle to getting out of that. And you're providing this very meaningful pathway. With that in mind, what are the best things that you do at the village?
The best things that we do from the other side is change behavior. We are experts at being able to dial in how do you change behavior and using a peer-led therapeutic environment to do that. So we're very good at that. And the other thing that people need, our board chair and co-founder, we've got an amazing board, but our board chair is Joseph Grenny. Joseph Grenny wrote the book Crucial Conversations. So New York Times bestseller. He wrote Crucial Accountability. A lot of those same principles are embedded into our day-to-day work. And Joseph is very hands-on. He knows students and villagers and neighbors' names on a first-name basis. They know him. Yeah. He's not just a name, on the board by title only or name only. He is very much entrenched. Yeah, he's in the front lines.
Yeah. That's amazing. Where is this headed? I mean, what is your dream for this organization?
I mean, for us to be able to say this is a model that works and we can replicate this worldwide, and it takes individuals who have that lived experience. You need that. As people say, well, how do we want to do this? How do we do it? Well, first you got to have people who have been there, done that, and know how to engage others to do the same thing. So for us, it would be being able to replicate it. Not saying we need the other side village in every city, but it could be another nonprofit. But for us to be able to say, here's our playbook, here's what we know works, that would be our vision.
Yeah. Well, it's an amazing story. We're not done. It's inspirational. It's uplifting. It gives hope to what seems like an overwhelming, and maybe it is, it's just an overwhelming issue that we face. And maybe if I'm using the wrong words, you can tell me.
But right words.
But
it's complex.
It's very complex. But hearing this story, and I hope other people who are listening feel the same way that I do, like, wait, there's a path. There's a way to work through this. And it's not going to help everybody, because not everybody wants the help. But for a significant portion of the population who wants help, there's a place to find it.
What the other cool thing, you asked a question, and not to sidetrack, but you said, how do people get involved or volunteer? We have volunteer chaplains. We've got volunteer yoga instructors. We've got volunteer art therapy teachers. So people that come in that are offering their skill set to us. And we rely heavily on donations. So to build 225 more homes, right, is a huge undertaking. And we're looking at how do we reduce costs of building and how do we get the most bang for our dollar. But our goal is to raise 20 million more so that we can do that. without having to rely on government funding. So when you go to the village and you walk through and you see the home, there's a plaque on every home. And for those who have sponsored a home, we give them, some parameters, but some naming rights. So, you'll see different homes that mean different things. There's Charlie's house. Charlie was a little boy that passed away, and the family all pulled resources together and were able to sponsor a home. That means a lot. That home's going to be there, and that's going to be able to provide a safe environment and refuge for someone that would otherwise be on the street.
It's an amazing story. I love it. And it's a heavy story. And I don't want to change that. I don't want to change the seriousness of it. I do want to ask you 3 random questions. I do want to do that. And I know that you've taken some time to prepare some answers here.
Well, I may not remember the answer, but...
Yeah. You've answered one. You've answered a couple already about the historical figures. I thought those were very interesting. You also wrote down Jesus here as well. And I mean, by the way, have you ever seen The Chosen? Have you watched?
I have.
It's fantastic. Do you know they're
great.
Coming out with
another one.
It's in theaters on March 28th.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay.
Are you hosting a theater?
No, we should do that. Oh, I would love that. What's your favorite story or fable? Do you remember this?
Yeah. I had to think about this one. So I would say, I think I put The Lion and the Mouse.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So The Lion and the Mouse, because I think for me, there's no small act of kindness that gets unnoticed, right? When you think about The Lion and the Mouse and that fable, and I won't take the time to go into it, but the lion essentially says, okay, Mouse, I'm not going to eat you. Mouse then saves the lion from the hunter's net, right? But that small little act saves someone's life. So nothing too small. That act of kindness can go a long way. It can save your life.
It's super fitting for you.
Yeah.
Like, I should have been able to guess. I love this one. I have this thing written down here that says weightlifting, cardio, or yoga. And it looks like you kind of reluctantly circled weightlifting, but then you wrote in your own activities, skiing and fly fishing.
Yeah. I mean, I try to lift weights. My boys get me to the gym. I'm their ride, right? So I take them, but if it were me, I'd rather be either on the slopes or on a river.
How has this year been for skiing? We've had a couple good days here recently.
I haven't been able to get there, but yes.
Oh, when do you find time? And what is it about fly fishing? Are you like the Brad Pitt out in the middle of with the scenic and the sunset and all? Is that you?
That's me. I'm not as good looking as Brad Pitt or anything
Robert
like
Redford.
that. Yeah, but river runs through it.
That's you.
If I can find a place where it's not so heavily dense with other anglers, then yeah.
It's here's the problem with fly fishing. Okay, here's the problem: is you see that movie and you think, "Yep, I'm in. I want to be that guy. I want to be the fly fisherman." And it's all so easy and rhythmic and coordinated, and the scenery and everything else. And then you get there, and you can't get the right
The right
tempo,
cast.
the right cast,
The right
and then you're
fly.
like this, and then you're like.
Then you're stuck in the tree.
You're stuck, and then you get something, you get a hold of something, and then you're falling down. Like, none of it is nearly as romantic as the way they make it seem.
Okay, well, I think we're taking a field trip, you and me. So we'll get you there. I mean, during COVID, when I had some time, I was tying a lot more flies. That's kind of a therapeutic thing too.
Yeah.
It's just to tie your own fly. And be
I've
able to-
heard that. I have a brother-in-law who does that as well.
So, yeah, I mean, the river concept to me is, kind of like living your life like a river. Rivers don't tend to go in reverse, and so it's the water's passing you by. So just look downstream, look forward, don't look behind. Don't worry what's happened behind you. Just focus on what's ahead of you.
John Candy said in a movie once that you should approach life like a twig on the shoulders of a mighty stream. You go with the flow.
That's good.
How do you like that?
I love it.
Yeah. Okay. Would you rather perform for the following? Utah Jazz. Your note is not right now. Why did you scribble out the Utah Opera? That would be my first.
Well, because I thought I would love to do all of those, right? But first, my voice I couldn't do it right with my voice right now. So that wouldn't work.
Well, it's just like if you could.
If I could, okay, yeah. All those are hard, like playing drums in the symphony. Oh,
Yeah, okay, so-
Percussion, timpani, yeah, sign me up.
This is the funny part. Utah Jazz, you wrote, not right now. Utah Opera, you scratched out. Real Salt Lake, you didn't even recognize. You just glazed right over it. There's not a note. There's not a circle. There's nothing.
Do you know how much they run? Like what, 20 miles a game?
Yeah, something like that.
I mean, I need to get in really good shape.
We could all benefit from that. Goalies don't run.
No, but the other side donuts is at the Real game. So come get a donut at the Real game. We have a food truck there.
I can't wait. I'm a donut aficionado, just so you know. Utah Symphony, you wrote percussion.
Yeah.
That's good. And then, you circled Utah Hockey Club. That makes sense because you're
hockey. Played hockey, coached for Highland High School.
You're a hockey guy.
Yeah. So love it. So glad that they're here. If you haven't been to a game, they're super fun.
I've been to a game. I went to a game when they broke Ovechkin's leg. I went to that game. Was that dirty? Do you think it was dirty?
I don't think it was dirty, but I don't think it was malicious either.
I'm reading your notes on our part 3, and I know that I have to let you get back to work. But it's so fun. I've just never had this experience where people have taken my outline.
Well, I hate to ask a question where I haven't really, because you get on a podcast, you never get thrown at. So it's like it's actually really beneficial for me to go through that. So thank you.
I'm going to go through this. The part 3 I like to do is more like of a personal. How do you keep yourself educated? How do you keep improving on a daily basis? What are the books that you read? What are the podcasts that you listen to beside Know Your Ship?
Yeah.
Why did you write down Dale Carnegie?
You said, what's one of your favorite books? How to Win Friends and Influence People. Love that book. I think everyone should read it just because there's so much good wisdom in that. And then it made me think of the Polar Express.
Yeah.
Where he says, the most important thing in life is friends, right?
Yeah.
Something to that extent. But friendship and, if you can influence people and how to do it, again, it goes, I think, to that connection and community part that is so key in what we do at the other side.
We're talking about a charitable organization, and typically the topic on this podcast is running a business. You're running a business.
Run multiple businesses.
Yes, and for profit and all of the challenges that go around and everything. You know what a recurring theme on this podcast is for all of the for-profit businesses that are running? Culture. The significance of culture in an organization. And if your culture's right, you're on the right path. Building relationships and how meaningful relationships are in a work environment. Being part of a team, how a 1 + 1 = 3, and how much more effective teams are. Do you know there was some statement I just heard recently about even of the individual who would consider or be considered the most antisocial, anti-community individual, the way that you punish that individual, put him in isolation.
Yeah, it's true.
So I just think it's really interesting. All of the themes that we talk about all the time, that is exactly what you are working on a daily basis. Yeah.
Constantly. I mean, people say, what's harder, running a for-profit or nonprofit? And I'm like, nonprofit by far. So hard. You have so many different, things to worry about and your mission. And I'm not worried about investors. I'm worried about the individuals that we're serving and how do we do that. And just, it's challenging.
Where do you find inspiration?
I find inspiration in a lot of ways. I find inspiration from my coworkers, being able to see their resilience and what they've overcome, and being able to see people triumph over who were unnoticed, invisible, kind of just no one cared about them, and be able to see them rise and become the person that they were meant to be.
You just don't think about it. We've probably all had experiences in our lives where you felt like something that you did or whatever, that you just weren't being seen. And that's makes you feel bad. But do you ever think about the concept of being invisible to somebody else? I just can't imagine how devastating that would be.
I mean, that's the thing we hear a lot is people, no one ever gave me a chance, or I was invisible. No one even said hello. Even when I was on the street begging, and it might have been just begging for money to get my next fix, but people just walk by you like you're just invisible.
Let me ask you this question. How should individuals approach or interact with, in that scenario, with people who are on the street, who are clearly homeless?
I mean, not everyone should. Not everyone's equipped or...
is it appropriate to just keep your head forward and drive by? Yeah. Or is it appropriate to wave? Is it appropriate to... I've heard all of the different things. What is it?
I don't think I have the right answer for any of that. But for me, what I think helps, or what I've asked individuals, when you're on the corner, what can people do? Even if it's just a wave or thumbs up, something like that, because a lot of times you're not there, you don't have enough time to interact with them right there. I wear a bracelet, so this bracelet has our phone number. It says the Other Side Village on it. And so for us, if I gave him a business card and said, hey, here's my business card, it's on the ground, it's chucked.
Stick it in his card wallet and put it in there.
But what we've noticed on bracelets is they go, oh, that's cool. They put it on. And I don't know when, but they may see that number when they're at their worst spot. Say, oh yeah, I remember that guy gave me this bracelet. I'm gonna give him a call.
Okay, are these bracelets widely available? I mean, is that an appropriate way to interact with somebody when you're at the street corner? Is just to reach in my cup holder and say, "Hey, just take a
Be a
look
village
at
ambassador." So we have these at our donut shop.
we need these. We need these.
These are
here.
good.
We need these here so
We'll
we
get
can
you
pass
some.
them out.
Because when you interact with people, it's, look, I can give you $1 or $2. That's not going to really go far, but I can give you a resource if you really, really, really want to help save your life. What would you prefer? 9 times out of 10 it's a bracelet.
Yeah.
But
Well, okay, we'd love to have those if we can get a stack somehow. I know a guy.
okay.
Yeah,
So
I
do
know
I.
a guy.
Yeah.
Okay, last question. By the way, you've been fantastic. This is a fascinating story. You are perfectly aligned to run this organization. You have a presence and a depth of character that is super meaningful.
Thank you.
I hope that comes across. We would love to invite you and some of the community back to do a podcast,
roundtable,
a roundtable. In fact, we'll get our whole organization here, and we'll have them sitting right in here, and maybe we'll do a little question and answer.
Make sure you have a lot of Kleenex. I'm just telling you.
Oh man, yeah.
Okay.
We can do that.
But if you want to be inspired, I can talk all day long. But man, you'll hear some stories of redemption and resilience.
We're gonna do that. Okay, before I let you go, tell me about the most satisfying or greatest success or just story that you have in your experience with the village.
I would say it was December 30th of 2024 when we did our grand opening at the village, and we had our first 6 residents that we handed keys to their own home. We had a lot of dignitaries there. We had Mayor Mendenhall that was there with individuals she knows. She comes and talks to our group. To be able to see them where they were and where they were at and cross the bridge and make those commitments, and now to see them, some of them are on payroll. Like now they're working in, one manages our donut shop, one's doing our retail donuts. So they're now employees. They're now my colleagues. And 8-9 months ago, they were on the street or in an encampment or a shelter. To me, that's like, man, that's what it's all about.
That's amazing. It's a great story. It's a great organization, continued success. Would love to have you back, and we're looking for big things.
Look forward to it.
Out of you and out of the village.
Yep, we're constantly fine-tuning and learning different ways to do it.
It just feels like a really meaningful path forward. Congratulations. Way to go, Preston
Thanks for having
Cochrane.
me, Frank.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Know Your Ship podcast presented by eHub. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review.